Well, if there's an unintended consequence or indeed a benefit to Canada's draconian magazine capacity laws, it's that we get a lot of practice in mag changes up here. Welcome to Precision Riflecraft, and thank you for joining me. A great big thank you to Mark in Kelowna for loaning us his PolyTech Type 81 7.62 by 39 rifle from Communist China, or as I like to call it, the Canadian Kalashnikov. Now, it used to be that the AK-47 was the Kalashnikov in Canada, just as it is in every other country. But in 1990, a group of Indigenous Canadians took up arms in a land dispute, an incident that came to be remembered as the Oka Crisis. The following year, Bill C-17 came into force in 1991, which was gradually expanded until it banned the AK-47 in 1994. Don't you love a good coincidence? After that, patriotic Canadians began affectionately referring to the Czech-made VZ-58 and CZ-858 pattern rifles as the Canadian Kalashnikov. It was the alternative to what had been banned. Unfortunately, in 2020, the Trudeau regime enacted a sweeping gun ban, the largest in Canada's history, and swept up with it the VZ-58 pattern rifles as well. So what that leaves us with now is the PolyTech Type 81. Now, the Type 81 has a lot in common with the VZ-58 because both rifles were designed as an improved AK-47. That was the design mandate that both countries had when designing those two rifles. Additionally, both designs incorporate a short-stroke gas piston system, which is inherently more accurate than the long-stroke system found in the AK-47. They also both feed from proprietary magazines because China, like Czechoslovakia before it, decided that their rifle ought to have a bolt catch. Now, the Chinese went a step further than the Czechs on the theme of an improved AK when they gave the bolt an additional inch or so of rearward travel. This allows the bolt carrier group to naturally decelerate before returning and reciprocating forward. This extends the service life of the rifle, differentiating it from the AK-47, whose bolt carrier group essentially slams into the rear of the receiver and into the trunnion. Now, unlike the Czechs, the Chinese had the good sense to put the safety selector switch on the left side for right-handed shooters, but unfortunately I did have to move it to the right-hand incorrect side in order to attach this bracket for mounting an optic. I'll return to that. The rifle also has a chrome-lined bore to extend its service life, and this interesting sort of rectangular aperture rear sight and H&K style hooded front sight. Another improvement over the AK-47 and VZ-58 rifles is this adjustable gas block. It has 3 positions, 1 for normal operation, 0 for off, which is for launching rifle grenades with this unusual spigot at the end of the barrel, and 2 for operating in Canada's far north in the dead of winter. Now, I kept it on the first setting throughout my testing, in part to reduce the likelihood of increasing the amount of space junk in low Earth orbit, given how far it chucks cases, even at that first setting. Now, in addition to those funky sights and that funny-looking grenade launching spigot, it also has a bayonet lug for attaching a man opener. The trigger weighs 5.5 pounds, which is about what you'd expect for a service rifle, better than I expected actually given the rifle's vintage and country of origin. And this rifle weighs 10.5 pounds once I added the Athlon Helos BTR 1 to 4.5 by 24 power rifle scope and Heron Arms mount, which I'll discuss in a moment. Overall, I'm very happy with this rifle. It's been very reliable, as you saw, but it's not perfect. It has quite a few parts that are very kind of cheap and tinny. The dust cover is by far the cheapest part I've ever seen on any firearm, but it works. And some of these rifles do have an issue where the barrel is not concentric to the receiver. That can cause major issues if you're mounting an optic to the receiver, which, like I said, I'll return to. But I did check this one, and it's perfectly concentric, perfectly straight and true. No problems here. My only other complaint concerns a reassembly. I don't know if they're all like this or if this one's just a little bit tight. But I find it really, really difficult to put back together again. You know, that dust cover and the recoil spring assembly bolt carrier group, all of that comes out, no problem. Very easy to field strip. It's a de-field stripping. It's putting it back together again. That's really tricky. I found it really difficult to get back on. It takes me 4 or 5 minutes every time I do it. Fortunately, it's not meant to be clean, so that shouldn't be a problem for you if you buy one of these. If you do get one and it passes the concentricity test, I highly encourage you to try to find one of these Heron Arms mounts. It gives you a lot of options. It's a very well-designed product. It's made here in Canada. Unfortunately, it's my understanding that it's been discontinued, but they're floating around on the pre-owned market. And who knows, hopefully they'll start making them again if enough people ask. But it is actually quite a nice product. It's a quick detach system, and it's fairly easy to work with. It's very easy to work with. Installing it was a bit of a chore. Not really a criticism of Heron Arms, but rather the leaf spring here in the fire control group. I had to open it up a little bit with a Dremel tool to get the safety selector switch turning properly. Once I installed the mount and torqued it down, I found that the safety was binding really, really badly, so I took everything apart and opened up that hole that the safety selector switch rotates in, and now it runs smooth as butter. The mount just slides on like this from the rear and locks down, just takes a second. And as you can see, it sits as low as possible, just barely above the dust cover, allowing you to get a red dot or even a magnified optic like this as low as possible. I'll talk a little bit about this optic because this is a really desirable piece of equipment if you're running a service rifle like this. For one thing, it's one of the shortest LPVOs, or low-powered variable optics, that I was able to find, which means that it encroaches upon that ejection area of the rifle as little as possible to reduce the likelihood of damage to the scope from ejected cases striking it at escape velocity. It is actually the only LPVO on the market that I'm able to find anywhere that has a focus adjustment. This is a really desirable feature, and every other LPVO that I've seen, and I looked very hard to find another one like this, I was not able to. Every other LPVO on the market has its focus fixed at a set distance, and you probably think that's not a big deal, and it isn't if you're shooting the rifle at that standard sort of, point blank to 200 yard range, let's say. Generally, these focus adjustments are fixed at 100 or 150 yards, depending upon the brand. But once you start running that rifle out to 500-600 yards, you're going to have major parallax error if you're not able to correct the focus. So I find this to be a very, very desirable feature, and Athlon stands alone in making an LPVO with an adjustable focus. Now, there is a Gen 2 version of this scope, which is a complete redesign, but I did reach out to Athlon, and I was very happy to hear that they're not discontinuing this, the Gen 1, because unfortunately the Gen 2 dispensed with that feature, and I think that was a mistake, but fortunately they're not doubling down on that mistake by discontinuing this, the excellent Gen 1. So it is a really cool optic, and it does have open turrets for dialing shots, as well as an illuminated reticle. Both the turrets and the reticle are graduated in minutes of angle, so it's really a low-powered MOA precision scope suitable for all kinds of applications. Because it's not using a ballistic reticle, you can use it with any caliber and rifle you like. So let's talk about accuracy, guys. Now, before I started my load selection and accuracy testing phase of my evaluation, I didn't yet have this optic. I pulled my Athlon Helos BTR Gen 2 4-20x50 off my Ruger American Ranch, and I mounted it up, and unfortunately within a couple rounds I found that ejected cases were striking the objective bell of the scope, dinging it a little bit, so I put an end to that and pulled out a red dot I just happened to have in my range box. That allowed me to at least select a load for this rifle from the 5 I brought to the range that day. Now, I did this load selection test at just 10 meters. The reason for that is that 10 meters is the farthest I'm able to make perfect shots on a paper bullseye with an unmagnified optic. Remember, guys, I have 40-something-year-old eyes, and the important thing is that you're able to repeat what you're doing from shot to shot. So the distance for this test isn't really important. We want to select the most accurate load, and we want to be sure that we're able to repeat our shots on that bullseye exactly the same way from one shot to the next. Of the 5 loads I tested, 2 were steel-cased loads made by Norinco, which is appropriate given the origin of this rifle, and 3 were brass-cased. Now, by the way, a lot of people mistakenly refer to this rifle as the Norinco Type 81 because they know that Norinco is China's state arms manufacturer. The funny thing is that it's not actually made by Norinco, it's made by PolyTech. And PolyTech came into existence because someone had the idea that maybe China's small arms could improve if they introduced competition into the process. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall of that meeting where some right-thinking person in the Chinese Communist Party approaches the Central Committee and suggests that maybe the way to superior products is competition. We can assume that he survived that meeting because to this day PolyTech and Norinco continue to exist. They both make small arms, they compete with one another, and China's strange sort of take on a market economy within a larger command economy. So the 2 Norinco loads I tested were a 122 grain full metal jacket, which I've done a lot of testing with in the past. It's a load that a lot of Canadian shooters are familiar with. It's readily available. And the other is a vintage Norinco load called Silver Box. It's a little bit strange in that there's no information on the box in terms of the bullet weight or anything like that, but I'll return to that in a moment. The 3 brass case loads were S&B 124 grain soft points, which is a great choice if you're going to be doing any hunting with this rifle. Certainly it could be appropriate for deer and other ungulates if you're using an appropriate bullet like that soft point. As well as 2 full metal jacket loads, both 123 grains, one from PPU and one from Lapua. As you can see from these 5 loads, the Norinco Silver Box produced by far the best results in this rifle, beating out even the PPU and Lapua. So apart from offering very little in the way of details, the Norinco Silver Box is quite a unique load. I actually pulled one of the bullets because having established that it was by far the most accurate of the loads in this rifle, I did want to get some information to put into my applied ballistics calculator to do some long-range shooting with this system. And so I pulled the bullet to get its length for the spin drift calculation, as well as its diameter and its weight. It turns out that it weighs 128 grains, which is by far the heaviest bullet I've ever seen loaded into a 7.62 by 39 factory load. And also interesting is its diameter at 311 caliber. So most 7.62 by 39 loads that I've measured, all of them actually to date, have been 310 caliber bullets. This one is 1/1000th of an inch larger. The only other variable I was unable to get, of course, is the ballistic coefficient, which applied ballistics requires, which I basically just guessed. I guessed that it's going to be about 0.27 with the G1 drag model, which is the appropriate drag model for flat-based bullets like this. And I did that basically by extrapolating after comparing it to other bullets of a similar weight and profile. Now, after completing that load selection, I went home and I did order this LPVO. And when it arrived, I returned to the range to do a proper accuracy test. This Norinco silver box turned out to be shooting just over 2.5 MOA, so that's pretty much what I expected. I'm pleased with the result. It could have been worse, I think. Could have been better, could have been worse. But 2.5 minutes of angle is about what I would hope for from a rifle like this. I'm happy with that. Now, before I packed up at the range and headed out to the field to do some long-range shooting, I had a go at this hostage taker target, which is set up at the 100-meter mark, and I was pleased to see that you could score repeated hits on the hostage taker without undue harm to any hostages. That demonstrates a degree of practical accuracy that pleases me with this rifle. To be honest, I wasn't sure what it would be capable of, but I was happy to see it bang steel over and over again, so I thought it's time to head out to the field and stretch its legs a little bit. My friend Byron joined me, and we started by setting up a man-sized 18-inch square target at 293 meters or 320 yards. I got a firing solution from Applied Ballistics and decided to find out how good I am at guessing G1 ballistic coefficients.
Shooter ready.
That was fine.
I was pretty pleased with the results at 320 yards, so I decided to move it back to 512 meters or 560 yards. Now, if you have a look at the projected velocity at that distance, you'll see that we're basically shooting at the limit of this system's supersonic range. You can also see that the bullet's energy at the target dropped 45% from 705 foot-pounds to just 385, about that of a 9mm pistol at point-blank range. Now, if you want a really vivid illustration of the differences between bullet designs, have a look at this. The Type 81 is a 19-inch 7.62 rifle firing a 128-grain bullet, terminating at 385 foot-pounds at 560 yards. A 16-inch 5.56 rifle with 73-grain ELD bullets will produce 406 foot-pounds at that same distance. Despite being a much smaller bullet, it actually carries more energy downrange at that distance. That is the difference between a dated, flat-based bullet and a modern, low-drag, boat-tail bullet. So let's have a go at it, guys. 512 meters or 560 yards.
Shooter ready. High left.
6 inches high and 6 inches left. Got it.
That's the sound we like to hear. I held bottom right corner. Stand by. What was that, Byron?
Bottom right by about 2 inches. Mid
Right
height.
center.
Mid skid height. You missed it to the right. Same. Low and to the right.
Low and to the right.
Good height. Still to the right. Good height. 2 feet to the right.
It's really drifting right, and I'm actually holding further and further left. So this, I think the ammo or the rifle or both are all over the place. Or am I shooting because I'm shooting off a pack, right? Probably all three.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Oh, that's a good square hit. When it's got that timber, when it's got that pitch, you're closer to center, you know. You know it's really resonating. Talk to me, Byron.
Didn't see it.
Stand by. High right.
Good height to the right. Right.
High right.
Right. That was barely right.
Ah, son of a bitch.
Good height on those last grouping.
One more mag and we'll call it a day. Because clearly, you know, you're not going to get consistent results at this distance with this system, right? So, but we have connected. Let's see if we can connect one more time out of 5 rounds. Come on.
Low. High and to the right. Right. Low.
I think I got one more round.
Right.
Empty.
So there it is, guys. That's an honest evaluation of this rifle's capabilities in real-world conditions. We're shooting off a rucksack. We're in the field. We're duplicating the conditions you would have shooting this rifle in any kind of practical scenario, such as hunting or repelling foreign invaders. And it is a hit probability of 15%, guys. So we got 3 hits out of 20, a full box of ammo, 20 rounds, and we got 3 hits. So suffice it to say that if the Chinese army ever invades, then all we really got to do is stay back about 600 yards and let our precision bolt action rifles do their jobs. So that's it for today, guys. I'd like to thank Mark in Kelowna again for loaning us his rifle, as well as Jeremy in Toronto for accepting Mark's M10X paperweight in trade for this rifle. I'd also like to thank Kyle in Vancouver for loaning us his Caldwell Stinger rest, and Byron, also in Vancouver, for spotting me during the field evaluation of this rifle. Now, last but certainly not least, I'd like to thank Calvin, also in Vancouver, for loaning us his, drum roll, 75-round drum mag. Now, I know it's kind of silly, guys, having a 75-round mag pinned to 5, but it is what it is, and who knows, maybe one day we'll restore our private property and personal security rights. These are fundamental human rights, and hopefully one day we'll be able to enjoy them and do big 75-round mag dumps out here. Until then, thanks for joining me, and hope to see you again next time.